is Gints Zilbalodis. I'm the director of Flow. I'm here at the IndieWire studio in New York to talk about the movie on the Toolkit podcast.
So, Gens, you did everything yourself on Away, your previous feature, which is amazing. But I'm curious, when it came time to make Flow, what came first? Sort of this idea to tell a story about a cat in a flood, or this desire to make a larger scale film and work with a team?
When I think about like what kind of films I want to do, sometimes I have an idea for like a story, and sometimes I have an idea for like the emotion that I want to evoke. And when they like, I'm looking for a story where these things align, because it's not enough to have a story or to have an emotion and to express it. Like I need to find something that like visually I can express these deeper things. And in this case, it was about like the cat in the water. I felt like I could express so many things
Mm-hmm.
in this environment. So I'd made this story as a short film a long time ago, and that was really about the cat sphere of water. But when it came to making this feature film, I knew that this could be like my first opportunity to work with a team, and I wanted to like have these experiences in the film, to talk about something that I'm going through myself. It's not something I'm not speaking about some past experiences. It's something that's very fresh in my mind. So I wanted to combine this idea of the cat being afraid of water and also my experience of learning how to work with a team. And I thought a cat would be a great protagonist for such a story because cats are very independent and do things their own way, and that could be like a good starting point for this character's arc that it can eventually learn to work together. And it was also like I was afraid of working together, but I figured if I make a story about it, I would have no excuse to kind of backtrack out of it. It would be like interwoven into the fabric of the story, and it was my way of kind of tricking myself into doing something I'm afraid of.
Yeah, being stuck in a boat together in a flood feels like a pretty apt metaphor for filmmaking, for sure.
Yeah, and like in the story, there's a lot of arguments and
Mm-hmm.
conflict, and but like this was written before the actual production, so the actual production went a lot more smoother, and we were really like supporting each other, and there wasn't like such big disagreements. But it was my anxieties of what it could be.
When you're building out a team for a film, uh, at what stage are you recruiting people, and kind of what are you showing them or getting them to listen to, um, or mood board type stuff? Like, how do you get people all on the same page?
Yeah, that's difficult, and especially in Latvia because we don't have like that many people there, so we don't have a lot of choices, and often you have to like teach people. Like you don't have like a ready-made person who's perfect for something. You have to find someone who's talented, and then we have to bring them to a place where we need them. But there were some people, for example, this person Martin Schupit. He does like he's like a genius with like water simulation, and I think he's like one of the best in the world at this. And we were like sharing like office space. Like he's from Riga, and like it was so lucky that he's like my neighbor basically, and we got him to do like the water effects in Flow, and usually there's like a huge crew of people doing like these water simulations in like big studio films, but we had like two people doing all the water in Flow, so it's a very small team. We had an amazing director of animation. That's the person that kind of supervises all the animators, and his name is Leo Silly Pellissier, and and he found such a great team along with our production managers, and but our team is so young. Like I was actually quite relieved that many of them were younger than me because I was quite anxious about kind of doing this for the first time and telling experienced people what to do.
Right, because you have to have all the answers.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and it was great to have like people my own age, and I felt very kind of much more relaxed talking with them.
The film does such a good job of making you pay attention and work and sort of come to your own conclusions about the nature of the world and the flood. And because the score isn't easy or traditional, it's also making you do that work and sort of really take the perspective of our cat protagonist. And I'm curious if that is something that you thought about, like sort of denying the audience a clear sense of place or culture, or yeah, how you thought about the world.
Well, in terms of the score, it was a very kind of intuitive process. I didn't have like any like rules, like what it should be. It was kind of discovered along the way, and I do like a lot of material. Well, I make demos of the score while still writing the script, while the clay basically still hasn't hardened. Yeah. When I can still mold things and I can shape the scenes according to the music and allow the music to really guide the emotion of the film. And this allows me to convey the tone, which is really hard to describe. But having the music early,
It's
it
like
helps really.
immediate shortcut to emotion and tone.
and
That's
and
so smart.
and so I write a lot of material that doesn't end up in the film. So we had more than 8 hours of demos, and we only used maybe like 15 minutes. So we used the best bits, and this means that I can edit the film using my own stuff instead of temp scores from other films. And so when I write those initial demos, I'm not really writing them for specific scenes. I don't even know if I'll write something happy or sad or fast paced or slow. So it's like because I can't really like if I'd be given a direction of what kind of music to write, I don't think I could. Like it's like it's almost accidental. It's like I just throw stuff at the wall, and sometimes something sticks. Yeah. And 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 then when I'm editing, I'm trying out this piece of music in this scene or that scene, and that sometimes gives me like some happy accident, something that wasn't like planned. Uh, of course, it doesn't fit exactly, but then I can go back and adjust the music, and I can also adjust the edit to find a way where they uh, are in sync. And in a way, like I'm editing as well and doing the music, but I would like recommend to all the editors and the composers to really work together to like really not to force the edit onto the music or force the music on that. Yeah, so it's about kind of finding that common ground. And but it's even like the movement of the characters. It's not just the cuts are in edited. It's when I'm designing the movement, the cat might jump into the water in sync with the tempo so of the music. So it's really important to have it early. To have it really like guide the film and so that it feels integrated. It's not something added on top of when it's finished.
Right. No, it just feels like part of the storytelling. That's really cool. I'm curious, kind of. It sounds like you're writing music with the script, and you're kind of experimenting with timing and with placing it in different scenes. Are you someone who like really looks to the script as sort of a template to build off of? Like, at what point do you leave it behind?
This is actually the first complete script that I've done. With my shorts and my first feature, I would just write an outline basically and then improvise the details visually. But this time, because of the bigger budget, we needed the script for the funding reasons. And so I didn't write script before because it's really hard for me. At least it was. Now that I've done it, it's like it's not that difficult. I've discovered like once you get into it, the ideas start flowing, and so it's actually quite fun. But yeah, the script is like half the length of a typical script because there's no dialogue, so the text is more dense. But it evolved a lot, and I don't remember how many drafts there were, but like there was a lot, and so the script was really necessary for the funding and for me to find the story, but we didn't use it in production. No one in our team really read it. Um, Instead, I would show them the animatic, which is like the rough edit of the film. And once the final draft of the script was done, I have even since, up until this day, I haven't read it. I made the animatic based on my memory of the script because I'd written it so many times, it was very like engraved in my mind, and I made the animatic chronologically, which helps me to keep track of all the character motivations. And also when I design the scenes, I can think about transitions. I can only focus my energy on stuff that ends up on the screen and not waste time on something that we would not use. And the animatic is almost like another draft of the script, so there was quite big changes actually, if I remember right, because I haven't read the script. But like these cat statues were not in the script, which is a big part, and there were some scenes which were never visualized, which I realized that don't work visually, and there were some new ones which were never in the script. So I tried to be very flexible in that way. I think animation can be quite rigid. Like it's like often like you're following a plan because it's so slow and it's so expensive. Because of that, you have to be very kind of strict in terms of what you do, like just to follow the plan. But I think because our film is somewhat smaller, I think this allowed us to have more freedom to try things. And so yeah, I did a lot of but that was also quite a lot of pressure on me to people were waiting on me, like we're gonna go into production and I'm still making these changes to the story. So but yeah, it ended up working, I think.
I feel like the moment I knew I was in good hands is like in after we see in the opening the cat's reflection. There's just a little handheld shake of the camera, and it's it's so clear that the camera is moving where it needs to be emotionally for the story. And sometimes, and as tempo is a great word. Sometimes it's very long and contemplative, and there are these sort of beautiful wides, and sometimes it's up close and chaotic, and it's all just kind of in tune with the story. It's very cool. I've heard you describe like that sort of process of finding the shots as location scouting, which I love, and I would love for you to talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, so we don't use storyboards because of the long takes. It's impossible to draw all the perspective changes because the camera spins around, and I'm also not really good at drawing. I can draw, but yeah, not. I'm very slow as well. And instead of storyboards, I basically start with the animatic. So it's like basically 3D storyboards, and I create a rough version of the environment, and it's already lit. So we have lights and some basic effects like the fog, which really influences where I place the camera, which is important to not separate the lighting from the camera placement because I heard that on bigger productions there are separate people doing these things, but I can't imagine separating these. And so I walk around this virtual environment with the virtual camera, and I try to find interesting compositions. But the great thing is that I can still adjust the set and even big things about it, like the mountains. I can push and I can add trees and I do the blocking with basic key poses of the characters. They're not really animated, so they're kind of floating in these environments, and it looks kind of silly to people who don't know this process. Because when you do a hand drawn storyboard, it's clear that it's like a sketch. It's unfinished, but sometimes we would show these 3D animatics to people, and they think that's like the final version. Even if we tell them, it's kind of harder to imagine what it's gonna feel like. But it's really for me. It wasn't really to convince anyone else. But yeah. So the great thing is that after doing these key poses with the characters, I can adjust the camera, and I can try different camera placements. I can try it from a wide shot or a close up, and with the long takes, like the camera is moving a lot, so there's like editing within the shot.
Yeah.
It's like in camera editing basically, and it needs to be like in sync with the music. It needs to like tell the story, but it's also very emotional. The movement itself can be
Yes.
very emotional, and so the way the camera moves, it can convey curiosity, it can convey fear, and it's sometimes it's like, for the most part, it's like the point of view of the cat. It's very subjective. It's very close to the cat,
Yeah.
and it sees what the cat sees. But there are certain moments where the camera becomes a character itself and gets distracted by something. And that's you would think that it's like an artifice that we introduce that would distract you, but actually I think these artifices can draw you in more,
Absolutely.
and I feel like this is something that hasn't been explored in animation. Like with these long takes, I think there's a lot of potential in animation to have more freedom that you don't have in live action, and I think you can push it a little bit further. You can, like, we wanted it to feel grounded, but at the same time, it's the camera goes in some impossible ways as well. That it goes underwater and up in the air, and it has this choreography with animals which you couldn't do in real life. But yeah, it's I think it really creates that sense of immersion to have less edits, like you, and also like in some of the longest shots, which are 5 minutes long, we don't use music, and that also I think can add to the immersion, because music is great. We have a lot of music, but like having long shots or scenes without music can really like make it feel more grounded and believable and intense. Sometimes like having less music can be more stressful and intense. So, and also that's something we don't see as much in animation, where there's always like the pressure to tell you exactly how to feel.
It's, yeah, there's this anxiety that a lot of animated films have, that to hold your attention, they need to be loud and clear and cutty. Um, and I like, one of my favorite shots in Flow is when the cat has fallen over the boat in the river and is starting to like lose momentum and drown. And the camera loses the cat, and the fact that we lose sight of the cat is more anxiety inducing than if we were right there. And then that slow reveal of the sea monster coming up just from the depths of the frame into the background, and it's just a shot that is patient and rewards the viewer's attention and holds your attention. It's suspenseful and beautiful, and it just shows that like animation can do everything that live action can do and be expressive in a way that the real world isn't, and it's very, very cool.
Yeah, and I heard that some people who don't typically enjoy animation are more open to flow. I think that might be a reason that the language of the camera is somewhat more like a live action film. Although it could only be, this story could only be done in animation,
Absolutely.
but the cinematic language is with the handheld movement and the long shots is something that I think yeah, we haven't really seen in animation, and so I think that really like makes it feel more grounded and believable and less cartoony in some way.
That is unsurprising to me that you've painted in the past, because there's this very soft, painterly quality to the animation style that's very beautiful. I would love to ask you a little bit about kind of how you settled on um, these sort of naturalistic, expressive textures, like and how you think about color and just, yeah, like kind of the sweet spot you wanted the animation to live in, if that makes sense.
Yeah, so I wanted it to feel immersive. So the world is quite detailed, but still it's not hyper realistic. So not just with the look, but also with the movement of the characters, we use the term naturalism rather than realism to describe the feeling that we were after, which is that it should feel real, but it should not be like a copy of real life. And so we studied real images, nature, but we're interpreting it, and we only put detail where it's really necessary, which is another tool for us to guide the audience to make them look at parts which are more detailed, I guess. And but I didn't want the characters to be fully like. I think the characters are less detailed than the environments because I think that makes them more appealing and allows us to like push the designs a little bit more, to have the emotions be more clear and direct. And I think then also the audience can project their own experiences onto the characters. They're filling the gaps of the design, and yeah, it was an ongoing process. We only like finalized the look like weeks before the finish deadline. So tried many different directions, and yeah, I think it's like I learned so much with each of the film, and I think like the next time I can actually do it better. But like I wanted it to feel like um, painterly as well. Like there's like brush strokes you see, and we don't have to add like all this detail because it's not hyper real. But it also means that we need to design everything. We can't like take some ready-made stuff from some library or even like ask an artist to make something realistic. That's very easy to tell them to do something like in real life. That's very objective. But when you have a more abstract or stylized style, then everything needs to be designed and it needs to be unified with all the rest of the world. And so there's benefits and disadvantages to making something more abstract.
It's absolutely wild, the performances and sort of the emotion and intention you're able to get out of the animal sounds. Not just, I mean, that is incredible that it's mostly just one cat, but also I was blown away by like how the dogs all sound different, and you get immediately, some of it's the design, but like you immediately get the sense of like their different personalities through the different sort of tenor and length of their barks, and then you have the such beautiful contrasts and the characters you created of like the chill capybara, acquisitive lemur, and secretariat bird who is a little awe-inspiring. Were there fun things you discovered by having that much contrast in the
Yeah, like
ensemble?
when even while writing the script, I was considering their voices, the voices, and also the designs that they all should be distinctive and different from each other. So yeah, I wanted the voices to be very specific to them, and we used real animal voices. We didn't use humans, and that was important to again to make it feel believable. But they're real animals, but they're not always the same animal that you see on the screen. So the capybara actually is not voiced by a real capybara. It's actually a camel that voices the capybara, and for the bird, again we mixed some different types of birds, but I think with those animals we have a little bit more freedom because we don't hear them that often. With cats and dogs, we have to be more careful, both in terms of the voices, but also in terms of the movement and the animation, because we really know them
Yeah.
very well.
We have many more expectations for what they'll sound and look like and move like. But it's great that you also have these sort of more heightened characters that, yeah, as you say, you get to sort of push and play with a little bit more.
Yeah, and I think the film starts by having all these characters be really grounded, and the cat is a real cat, and the dogs are dogs, and but like again, I didn't want to just like rigidly follow that rule, and if the story requires us to push them a little bit, I think we can, and also because the look of the film is a little bit stylized and it's more abstract. This allows us to do that. If it would be hyper real, I think it would be more jarring. So again, like um, it was important to have for these characters to have agency, that they're influencing the story. I didn't want them to be like stuck in a boat and not really being active participants in the story. So we needed them to steer the boat. But I think that happens at the point where you've already accepted them as real animals, and I think you suspend your disbelief in some ways and allow yourself to believe that. But uh, I think, yeah, in animation you can push this a little bit further, and the same with the camera. Like I wouldn't move it as much. I think in real life I would maybe let it sit a little bit, but I think I can push it a little bit more, and people accept that in animation.
It almost reminds me of video games in a cool way, where you sort of teach the audience the world they're in, how to understand the characters, and then you can level up and do things that are slightly more complicated until you get to the top of the mountain and enter sort of a cosmic space, and uh, you completely go with it because you've believed the realism up to that point. As it's gone further and further and further, it's really cool.
Yeah, and I think it works because it's really like driven by the characters.
Yeah.
It's not some random direction that I decided to go. It's really all stems from the emotional journey of the characters, and it's just a visual expression of how they feel. And I think it's really the music that helps to like blend it all together. And but I like that, like, to have like a big new direction late in the film that you didn't expect, and that's a big risky thing, but I want to have something like that. I try to have like some unexpected ways that the film can go to, and which is a big challenge to me, and then I have to like figure out how to make it work. But yeah, I like to like throw like an unexpected direction.
It's very cool, and I felt like as an audience member, I was like noticed the boat in the tree at the top of the film. Was like, oh, that's a neat world building detail, and was not expecting a boat in a tree to be a problem at the end of the movie. It was great.
Yeah, it's part of the kind of a circular structure of the film. I think, like, yeah, maybe this goes a little bit into spoilers, but like I'll try not to be very specific about it. But like I like it's a typical like a hero's journey idea of starting at home, going on a journey, and returning home having been changed. And I couldn't make it sense that the cat would actually return to its home. That was the original plan, but it didn't make sense. And once I figured out like just an image is enough, it doesn't need to be the actual location, but just like having these repetitive images can convey a lot of showing how these characters are changed. And um, and and so, yeah, it was important to have these kind of repetitive motifs in the beginning of the film end up in at the end of the film, but now in a different context.
Well, Gints, thank you so much for talking to me about the film today. I really appreciate it.
Thank you so much. This was great.